Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason is directed by Beeban Kidron, written by Andrew Davies, Richard Curtis, Adam Brooks, and Helen Fielding. It's based on, once again, a novel of the same name by Helen Fielding, and stars again Renee Zellweger, Colin Firth, and Hugh Grant. And in Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason, Bridget and Mark begin to go through some bumps in their relationship while Daniel Cleaver reappears in Bridget's life. Now, if that synopsis sounds really similar to the first movie, Bridget Jones's Diary, you wouldn't be wrong, because this whole movie really is pretty much kind of a retread of the first film, all the way down to that poster, which looks just like the first movie's poster. And overall, Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason really is sort of like an unnecessary, bland, generic sequel that you've seen 100 times before. It is pretty much the same thing, but with little of the charm that made the first so special. And it is pretty boring all throughout. However, I will say that the actors do still give it their all. Now, the big problem in Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason is in the writing. It just feels totally unnecessary as a story, because by the end of this movie, semi-spoiler I suppose, the characters really are in the exact same place as they were at the end of Bridget Jones's Diary. But the journey towards this point just isn't interesting. The entire film is just this back and forth of Bridget and Mark either fighting or, you know, having their budding romance all over again, and you don't really understand why they fight or why they make up. You know, we don't really understand Bridget's state of mind that kind of leads her to these decisions. It's really just this couple having fights. The movie makes the conclusion that, you know, all couples fight, but that's kind of a shallow treatment of any sort of romance. And Beeban Kidron's direction really is just too overly serious relative to the first film, and she doesn't have the same kind of playfulness that Sharon Maguire had for the first film. And this movie does that typical sequel thing where the shenanigans get bigger in scale, but the focus is instead placed on the shenanigans themselves, no longer the characters. So we don't really care about the characters that much. And it's kind of strange just how closely this movie imitates the first. There are certain scenes and certain story beats that really feel just directly pulled straight from Bridget Jones's Diary, and that shows just, like, to me, a level of laziness on the part of the writers. And this movie is also somewhat sort of offensive towards Thai people and like lesbian relationships. Like, they never delve deep enough into these things, so they come off as caricatures. The editing from Greg Hayden as well just lacks the energy that the first one had, and overall the editing here really kind of lacks a sense of progression, so we don't really get how much time has passed between Bridget's and Mark's fights, or like how long they've been okay with each other. And what's really disappointing about this movie is that it no longer feels like it's being told from Bridget's point of view. For me, that was the #1 like special thing about Bridget Jones's Diary. But here, you know, the way they use voiceover narration just isn't done so well, because her narration doesn't really add anything to the scenes you're seeing on screen. She's just narrating literally what's happening. So overall, Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason really just doesn't feel that much like a story told by Bridget. And visually, it's also kind of unremarkable. You know, it makes the mistake of thinking that going to these bigger locations will naturally be more visually appealing, but that's not true, because the way these places are shot, it's just all sort of normal. The music also doesn't really feel as inspired as in the last movie. You know, some song choices here do work better than others, but the way these songs are used it just comes off as more intrusive, or just not edited the scenes well. Especially one scene where they use this song called, I believe in a thing called Love by The Darkness, which is a great glam rock song, which you should listen to, but the way it's edited is just so choppy in that scene. However, on the positive side, Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason is not completely devoid of laughs. There are still moments of strong writing, some strong, clever, funny writing, and some strong delivery, which brings me to the actors. All the actors in this cast are still very, very capable. Renee Zellweger, Colin Firth, and Hugh Grant really are playing the exact same characters that they played in the first movie, but that's not entirely a bad thing, because they are good at playing these characters. You also get to see a lot more from Bridget's friends, which is good because they're also good. And I guess that's what I can say about Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason as a whole. Like, the other parts of the production don't feel like they're in the same spirit of the first movie, but the cast is still in that same spirit, and they're really what saved this movie from being flat out bad. In the end, Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason is really just sort of a meh, mediocre, forgettable film. And I'm really hoping that Bridget Jones's Baby, which comes out tomorrow here in the Philippines, introduces new themes, not just romance, to just kind of like freshen up the story. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Bridget Jones' The Edge of Reason. If you guys have seen it, please tell me what you thought about it, and whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.